We are going to start this afternoon with our first exercise in democracy. I'm from Britain, so we've rather gone off the idea of democracy, because you ask people what they want, they tend to give you the wrong answer. But there are no wrong answers at all in this one. You will see on your app, if you get out your phones, which you've probably done already so you can mute them, you can see on the app there is a big fat vote button. Do not press it yet. That's correct. Yeah, don't press it yet, but have it poised, have your finger poised over it, because the first thing we're going to do, oh, there we all are, we got all our directions. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a question about the Paris climate change targets and the degree to which we are feeling optimistic or otherwise that we are going to hit them. So I think we have there we are, we've got your choices there. We will have in a second, probably slightly more clearly. That's not a choice, that's a necessity. Okay, have we got something where we can show the choices? There we are. Okay, so your choices. Do you think the Paris Agreement targets will be achieved? Yes, no, maybe. So now you can press the vote button, I think, and there will be a countdown to give you time to vote. How's that going? You're pressing your vote buttons. We're getting a countdown. Democracy is an inexact science, you understand. There we go. We got a little countdown happening. So you've got 38 seconds to make up your mind. That's slightly longer than the time between now and Brexit. Yes, no, maybe. It's going to be quite interesting. There are differences in whether you think something might happen and you want something to happen. It'll be interesting to see who's optimistic. So 10 more seconds. You're all looking very pensive. You've probably already voted. Okay, and the answer is... Ta-da! My arm will fall off if I keep making these emphatic gestures. Whoa, okay, oh, we had a brief glimpse of democracy and then dictatorship returned. Even computers need time to think. This is early days for democracy in TERI. Right, we got a little clue. It looked, and from the first glimpse that we had, as though we had a narrow majority of yes over maybe. Oh, here we go. Lovely. Can we move it up so we can see? There we are. Lovely. So we're assuming that the 36% refers to yes, I think, and they're pretty evenly split. So you're sort of borderline optimistic, and a third of you think we're stuffed, basically. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. We'll be doing one more of these after the next session, and then quite a few more as we go through the summit. Of course, the joy and also the nightmare of sustainability is that everything is linked. So the state of the climate affects the oceans, and the oceans affect the climate. And when we think about the oceans, we're going to be focusing on that now. We're going to be picking up on that collaboration that was announced at lunchtime by our two illustrious seahorses, Dr. Matur and Ms. Hagen. And we're going to be looking about how we move towards achieving cleaner oceans. We've got an excellent group of panelists who I'd like to invite up onto the stage now, who are going to be sharing their thoughts on this. We've got Mr. Vidar Helgesen, who is Norway's special envoy for the ocean at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Norway. Then we have Ms. Notthoff, who is the Senior Western Advocacy Director at the Natural Resources Defense Council for San Francisco and Sacramento, those two Californian ocean-facing cities. And last and certainly not least, Dr. Sunil Pandey, Director of Environment and Waste Management at TERI. And our chair this afternoon is Dr. M Rajeevan, who is Secretary at the Ministry of Earth Sciences here in India. So, Dr. Rajeevan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. I also welcome all of you for this important plenary session moving towards cleaner oceans. And I have with me three very distinguished panelists, Mr. Vidar, Ms. Annie, and Dr. Sunil Pandey from TERI. As all of you know that oceans are very important to us. It gives us food, energy, water. It also plays a very important role in terms of weather and climate systems. And also we know that because of global warming and climate change, ocean ecosystems are getting affected. We are worried about, for example, Indian Ocean is getting most of the warming in terms of rate of warming. This Indian Ocean warms much faster rate than any other oceans. So we have implications in terms of global warming and warming oceans in terms of monsoon circulation systems and India's, for example, India's economy. And recently we also started discussing about how clean our oceans are. And for example, Ministry of Earth Science has the mandate of monitoring oceans, especially coastal areas. We have been doing this measurement of, for example, seawater quality measurements for the last 25 years, and especially from west and east coast. And what our data shows, very clearly shows that there are many coastal areas where the seawater quality is very, very poor. And mainly because of the sea influx coming from the untreated water, sewage water coming through rivers. And also the coastal activities, especially the tourism, etc. And last 1 year, for example, and we have been now hearing, and also we are also discussing very seriously about marine litter, and it's gaining importance every day, and more importantly, marine plastics now. So, and this panel discussion will be more on marine plastics. And I'll give a little small statistics. Of course, some of you definitely will be knowing the details of how grave the situation is. So you know that about 300 million tons of plastics are produced every year for use in a wide variety of applications. Out of that, about 8.8 million tons of plastic end up in our oceans every year. It's a very huge number, make up about 80% of all marine debris from surface water to deep sea sediments. Our remaining 20% is originating from catastrophic events or maritime sources. For example, UN Environment estimates that 15% of marine litter floats on the sea surface, 15% on the sea water, and remaining on the seabed. And plastic trash has been found both in Arctic, very far away from main places, and Arctic as well as Antarctic. Virtually nowhere in the ocean is untouched now. Asia was the leading source of mismanaged plastic waste. In fact, the literature very clearly says that 10 largest emitters of ocean plastic pollutions worldwide are most of them from Asia, countries like China, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Malaysia. Then other 3 countries are Egypt, Nigeria, and Bangladesh. New research shows about 10 river systems are located in heavily populated regions where littering is more common. And 5 countries in Asia are estimated to account as much as 60% of the plastic waste entering into the ocean that we are aware of. And also, of course, there are millions of tiny pieces of plastic called microplastics that also is a serious concern for all of us. So there is if the rate of this plastic debris, if it enters the ocean, goes unchecked, it is possible that the ocean would contain 1 kilo of plastic for every 3 kilo of fish by 2025, and more plastic than fish by 2050. So there is an urgent need to explore the use of existing legally binding international agreements to address this marine plastic pollution. Of course, the recycling or reuse of plastic products will be one choice. So probably in this panel discussion, we will discuss more details about how to cope up with this kind of situation. And TERI is advising us the deliberation, therefore, would focus on the best practices adopted to tackle marine litter, especially plastics in European countries. So we want to know what other countries are exactly doing on marine plastics, and whether they have adopted some policies or rules and regulations in their country, and how these approaches can be custom-made to be adopted in India and other South Asian countries to arrive at arresting leakage, plastic waste by adopting better collection strategies, avoid litter finally going to coastal waters, and devise mechanism to retrieve marine litter, thus achieving the global goal of clean oceans. And Ministry of, I will briefly conclude this now, and I will mention, before I conclude, I will mention 2 or 3 important aspects. One is the Ministry of Earth Science, as I told, that have the mandate of oceans, and we have been doing a lot of seawater quality measurements. And now we have recently launched a program on marine litter, especially marine plastics, and especially to find out how much is the quantity of marine plastics going into the oceans. So we have 2 coastal research vessels. We have 2 ships which can fly along the coast. And so using those 2 ships, we are doing this kind of measurements. And also we are working with an organization called SACAP, which is a UN organization. And we recently brought out a report called Marine Litter in the South Asian Seas region, SARS region, and development of regional action plan on marine litter. This is the report, is available in our website. We can also give you a soft copy later. And so we have done some initiative. We started some initiatives to work closely with different countries. Now today morning we had a discussion with the Commonwealth groups of countries for how we can collaborate to take up this matter again, and also further how to cope up this kind of situation. And yesterday I understand that Norway and Ministry of Environment and Forest has signed a letter of intent for collaboration in marine litter and marine plastics. So momentum is really picking up. So this is the right time that we discuss this kind of serious issues. And I am happy to see that a large audience is sitting here and listening to us, and we will get the inputs and as well as feedback from all of you. So with this, I will stop my introduction, and I will request now to all the panelists, remaining panelists, to speak their words. And I will introduce Mr. Vidar Helgesen. He is from Norway. He is born on 21st November 1968. Currently serves as Norway's special envoy for the ocean. Prior to this, he was Minister of Climate and the Environment, 2015 to 18, and Minister of EEA and EU Affairs, 2013 and 15. Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Erna Solberg, 2015 to 13 to 15. He was Secretary General of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance from 2005 to 2013, and State Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 2001 to 2005. He graduated from the University of Oslo with a Master of Law. I will request Mr. Vidar to have his words.
Thank you. We had a democratic process determining in the panel that we would stand while talking to provide some more energy. We didn't use our phones in the vote, though. But I'd like to start by thanking TERI for putting the ocean on the agenda, because the ocean is of absolutely vital importance to us all. It provides 50% of the oxygen in the world, meaning that every second breath we take originates from the ocean. It's home to between 50 and 80% of all life on the planet. And that interval, that span, tells us also something else, namely that there's a lot we don't know about the ocean. 50 to 80% of life, we don't really know. It provides food. It's the primary source of protein for 3 billion people, and that number is set to double in the next 20 years. It's a source of livelihood for many, and it's under threat. And I'm going to focus on 4 points. One is that plastic pollution is the fastest growing environmental problem that the world is facing, most likely. We need to stop the discharge of plastic. From the side of Norway, we have been championing a zero vision for plastic into the ocean, and we were happy that the UN Environment Assembly in 2017 adopted a goal of ending and stopping the discharge of plastics into the ocean. Now, for that to happen, there's a lot that needs to take place. but we need to start with that zero vision. But plastic pollution is not the only problem. We have other pollutants from agriculture and urban wastewater. There's biodiversity deprivation. And plastic pollution isn't even the biggest problem for the ocean. The biggest one is most likely climate change, which is altering ecosystems, dislocating resources and making resources be on the move around the world, and all creating a lot of unpredictability around the ocean. But there's also interaction between climate change and plastics. More extreme weather, more flooding means more plastic discharged into the oceans as well. My second point is that plastics, as well as other environmental problems in the ocean, don't originate from the ocean. They largely originate from land. And in turn, they have severe effects on land and on humans. This is very evident when it comes to plastics. The plastic bags we use, the single-use plastic, the contact lenses, the single-use contact lenses that we might wash out in the toilet but shouldn't do, and a lot of other sources, that we don't even know about. What we did in Norway was to ask our environmental agency to map sources of plastics, and then both the marine litter category and the microplastics category. And when they came back with their report, they pointed to the major source of, the biggest source of microplastics being something that I think nobody had even thought of as a source of microplastics. The biggest source of microplastics from Norway to the ocean is rubber dust from car tires. And that's probably the same for many countries around the world. The second source is rubber fragments from artificial football grounds that have these rubber bases. And as we learn these things, we need to set in targeted measures on plastics. And there's a lot of hype around plastics in the ocean. There's a lot of symbolism around it and a lot of politics and politicians seeing that this is an attractive domain for making their mark. But that also can lead to a number of measures being put in place that might be well and good, but might not be the most important ones. And I think it's very important that we take a knowledge-based approach to combating plastics. But related to this point that the land-based sources are really key, is the fact that we need to stop seeing the ocean as a domain separated from land. We need to start seeing land and ocean as parts of planetary systems, and we need, and this is my third point, we need to make that realization find its way into public policy and planning. Where we know very well the concept of spatial planning and urban planning, for example, on land. Varies in quality from place to place, but the concept is well known. We need to start planning for land, coastal systems and ocean as a whole, because they are so interrelated, both in terms of the natural forces that are at play and in terms of the human activity that impact both land and ocean. So just as we need spatial planning on land, we need that for oceans. And moreover, we need an ecosystem-based approach, integrating knowledge of natural resources, environmental pressures, and human activity. One evident example of how important planning is for that totality is waste management, because waste management is really the key if we are to stop the discharge of plastics into the ocean, but it's largely a matter of planning and good public policy and public administration on land. My fourth point is that if we do that, if we do plan in a systematic way, if we have the right public policies and good public administration and public planning, we can unleash huge opportunities in the ocean, both in terms of the living resources in the ocean. We can really make the regenerative capacity of the ocean come true, with enormous benefits for health, for jobs, and for the economy. But also when it comes to non-living resources, I mentioned waste management. Waste is actually a resource. Waste is a resource gone astray. the right public policies, the right mix of regulations and taxation can put a value on plastics, for example, providing the incentive for businesses to make use of secondary plastics, and therefore combining a good environmental result with more jobs and more value. And in a number of other ocean-related domains, we see the same thing. Decarbonizing coastal shipping, river transport through electrification can have huge environmental benefits, certainly on air quality, but will also provide an opportunity for new jobs in advanced technologies. Offshore wind, another such win-win between getting emissions down and creating industrial opportunities and jobs offshore. And I mentioned fisheries, but I should also, of course, mention aquaculture. If we are to feed a growing population, and not least feed them without plastic in the food, aquaculture is a huge, huge opportunity. So my point is really that, yes, we need to combat plastics. We need to do that as part of a total effort for a sustainable ocean economy. My Prime Minister has initiated and is chairing a panel now of 14 heads of state and government that are looking at exactly this. How can we and how can the world jointly work towards managing our oceans better with a view to creating jobs and livelihoods, better food, more healthy food for more people around the world, and at the same time minimizing the climate and environmental impact and creating jobs through a cleaner ocean. We think this is possible, but it does require good public policy. It does require meticulous planning. It does require seeing the whole, seeing that the ecosystems of the ocean are really where we need to start in terms of making the oceans regenerate and keep on giving, because they can do that as long as we treat the oceans well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vidar, for your excellent view on the plastic pollution. And now we'll move on to the next presentation by Ms. Annie Notthoff.
Yes.
She is the Senior Western Advocacy Director of the National Resources Defense Council, NRDC, in San Francisco and Sacramento. She directs a broad range of state-based initiatives to promote climate action, public health, and environmental protection. She led NRDC's efforts to get many of California's nationally significant environment law enacted, including the Marine Life Protection Act, 1999, Poverty Clean Car Bill 2002, Global Warming Solutions Act 2006, Climate and Land Use in 2008, Water Policy Reforms in 2009, Clean Energy and Pollution Reduction Act 2015, 2030 Greenhouse Reduction Targets and Equity in 2016, and extending California's price on carbon to 2030 and strengthening local air quality controls 2017. Ms. Notthoff is a board member of the State Coastal Conservancy, and she served on the board of California League of Conservation Voters, CLCV, for over 20 years. She had held appointed positions on several state and federal advisory committees. In 2015, she was honored to receive a CLCV Northern California Environment Leadership Award. She has an undergraduate degree from University of Oregon and the Masters of City and Regional Planning from the University of California at Berkeley. She and her husband, Dwight Holling, live in Orinda and have 2 adult children. And I will request.
Now you know everything about me.
I will request Annie to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you to TERI and for bringing us here. I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council. You heard from our president earlier today, and I've had the honor of working with NRDC in San Francisco and California for over 30 years. And during that time, we've really carved a role for ourselves, and I think we've achieved a lot when it comes to coastal and ocean protection. NRDC's been doing having a program in India for 10 years, and we've already made a big difference here, I think, and we look forward to doing a lot more. So as many people know, in California, the coast is really kind of a state of mind, right? It's kind of where, hey, dude, where's the beach? And I think that it's that connection between the coast and the ocean that has really propelled us to design many of the effective ocean protection programs that we have. One of the things that we did was 20 years ago, we set up a system of marine protected areas that really was a science-based system that looked at many of the natural areas that were fish nurseries and where the ocean could really regenerate. And at the time, 20 years ago, people said, oh, that's not going to make a difference. Well, flash forward to now, and we're seeing how the ocean and fisheries populations really can restore themselves. So I think that's one of the hopeful things when we talk about the ocean, is the ocean does have an immense healing power, and the ocean can regenerate if we give it a chance to do that. One way that NRDC thought about making the land-ocean connection years ago was that we set out to do information campaigns that actually we did an annual beach report. So just before what in the US is the beginning of summer, is our Memorial Day weekend at the end of May, when millions of people head to the beaches, we would do a "Do you know what's in your water?" report. And that really kind of got people's attention about, oh, okay, I can go swimming or surfing, but is that safe? And that helped propel a lot of programs that helped reduce pollution into the ocean, and we have healthier ocean waters off of California as a result of it. So I wanted to just say, how I liked Vidar's comments about how plastic pollution is really generated on land. The oceans are just a victim of that, and they have to deal with that. In California, another thing that has really generated a lot of concern about the ocean is the fact that we have a very vibrant coastal tourism economy. Our coastal tourism economy pumps $45 billion a year in US dollars into our California economy. And the size of California's economy allows us to really develop some market mechanisms that can help drive markets beyond our own borders. California now is the 5th largest economy in the world, just after Germany, I believe, and a little bit before France. So our market can really make a difference. But the size of our market is actually one of the reasons that it's threatening the ocean because of the size of our market. And I think that and California is trying to bring our ocean ethos to the Bay when it comes to climate, because we just hosted a subnational climate conference in San Francisco last fall, and at that conference, California introduced our contribution to the ocean climate efforts. And because the ocean it's not only a victim of climate change, but it can also be a source to help us combat and adapt to climate change. So I think one of the things that we're doing is really injecting ocean management into the climate debate, and it gives a broader range of activities and policy changes that nations can take all over the world to really combat this problem. And I wanted to take a minute to talk about the role of subnationals and cities in the fight against climate change, as well as to reduce plastic. Certainly at the municipal level, as we've learned from a lot of the work that NRDC and others are doing with the Bloomberg Foundation, we're really focusing on cities because that's really where that delivers a lot of these municipal services, and that's where your garbage, you think about cities, you think about, and that's where your garbage is dealt with. So I think those are really places where you can promote less waste, and we've done that here in San Francisco, for example, and we've committed to reduce our landfill disposal by half by 2030. And the other thing, we've been doing policies to reduce plastic and waste, but we've also just decided to ban some of the more egregious offenders, so that we have actually banned single-use plastic bags, and just last year we've now said that straws are only available on request. So those are just some of the things we're doing, although when it comes to plastics, I do believe we're lagging behind India at this point. But so much more remains to be done, and I think that we can touch on some of these during the question period, but I just wanted to talk about the fact that when it comes to plastic pollution, really the solution is all of us. We look in the mirror, and it's really our daily practices as consumers and users of these products that can really make such a huge difference. And I think that is both an encouraging thing, because we are the solution to our problem, but it's also really some of the hardest thing to do when it comes to public policy is to change individual action. So those are some of the challenges that we have in front of us, but I take great hope in knowing about the healing properties of the ocean itself, and the fact that when we do decide to make a change, human behavior can change remarkably quickly. I think if you look at the example that we've had just in the last few years of moving from single-use plastic bags to reusable bags, it's almost just regular now that everyone has their reusable bags with them, when just a few short years ago, no one could conceive of that. So I think we have an immense ability to change quickly, and we also have the healing power of the ocean that are cause for hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie, for sharing your experience with California and also your comments. And now we'll move on to the third delegate, Dr. Sunil Pandey. He's a distinguished scientist from TERI. He's the Director for Environment and Waste Management. He's a senior fellow and Director of Environment and Waste Management Division of TERI. In addition, he's also adjunct faculty at the TERI School of Advanced Studies. He has more than 25 years of consultancy research experience in the areas of municipal, industrial, and hospital waste management, plastic waste management, waste to energy issues, impact assessment, air, water, and soil quality monitoring, site assessment, performance evaluation of ETP, and institutional strengthening and capacity building. He has obtained his PhD degree in hazardous waste characterization from Nagpur University while working as a project fellow of NERI. Nagpur which is an organization under CSIR. He has a MSc Analytical Chemistry, Banaras Hindu University, India, and did his BSc Chemistry from BHU. Prior to joining TERI, Sunil has worked for ERM India as consultant for 2 years, where he was working on projects related to hazardous and hospital waste management and environment site assessments and institutional strengthening and capacity building. Sunil also has worked as a research assistant at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology and Development of landfill liner for containment of land disposed hazardous waste at University of Hong Kong on deriving material balances and associated environment pollution of Hong Kong region as part of his postdoctoral research. He's a very experienced person, so we'll listen to him.
Thank you, Chair Sir, for kind introduction, and very good afternoon to all of you. I would like to begin with providing you a little historical perspective on of what we started doing around 12-13 years back. In 2005-06 around, TERI did a report for MOEFCC and UNEP on contribution of land-based activities to coastal pollution. And this was part of Global Program of Action commitment of UNEP to, of MOEFCC to UNEP. And interestingly, around that time, there was no mention of plastics. And what we concluded in our study was that sewage, untreated sewage generated from cities, especially coastal cities, around 70% of what they generate gets discharged finally into coastal water and is the prime cause of pollution. In addition, what we also found out that the waste management, solid waste management in the coastal cities was not adequate. And most of the time the litter found its way into coastal water. And now we know, of that litter reaching the coastal waters, how it has resulted into massive problem of ocean pollution and ocean litter, as our guests from US and Norway have mentioned. And so now we have better realization on how what plastics is causing and what plastics contribution is towards marine litter and especially the literature says that around 80% of pollution contributed to marine waters is contributed by land-based activities. With this, why this is happening? Because, if you look at recycling, especially plastics, if you look at recycling in a country like India, we kind of come out with a figure that we almost recycle 60% of plastic waste generated. And for certain polymers, it's still higher. For example, if you look at PET recycling, we claim that around 90% of PET is reclaimed and recycled into valuable products. But the question is, what is happening to portion which is not collected, around 40% which is not collected, and is leaking from the collection system and also as a result from recycling system. And all of that mostly goes into some stream or other, goes to the disposal sites. And there are reports which suggest that disposal sites also are major problem. For example, I was going through ISWA action plan on marine litter, and it says that disposal sites, especially in coastal regions, are also contributing to marine litter, not only because of the plastic waste disposed there, but often, in certain conditions, they get airborne. So we are looking at not only transmission of plastics and marine litter through waterways into coastal waters and marine waters, but also airborne transport of this litter into coastal waters. As a result, what report says is that dump site management becomes a very important issue in developing country context, and this is also true for India, where we know, the dump sites, the way they are managed, are source of pollution and are cause of concern. My next point is what we discussed yesterday in the thematic on the same issue, is that litter management is important issue. We had a representation from IPMA, and Mr. Habu, I believe, is here, and he suggested that what urban local bodies need to do is evolve better litter management practices. And why we have a problem of littering, not because of the behavioral aspect of people that they tend to litter, but also because of very peculiar situation that the type of pouches which we use in our usage, small, say, shampoo pouches, small oil pouches, other pouches, a small size, 5 ml, 10 ml size pouches, they often are littered because it's very difficult to basically influence people to not throw them here and there, not basically throw them into litter bins. But also, that's a major cause of littering. So one suggestion in the session was that we should actively look at how we can look at producing bigger pouches and heavier pouches which which are not prone to littering. And littering is something which one needs to basically actively control. So the different options for that is either, heavy fines for littering, and also better litter management by collecting the litter by providing incentive. So as a result, one of the experiments which we have been doing in part of Delhi is providing certain incentive to informal waste pickers for collecting such low-value plastics. Such low-value plastics often leak from systems, single-use plastics and such small pillow pouches. So if informal waste sector is provided certain incentive, we have seen that they pick these materials which are otherwise littered, including multi-layered plastics, which are also a cause of concern. And then these are collected and aggregated, and one option which we have practiced here is they are sent to cement kilns for co-processing, which is an interesting option in the sense that if they don't have incentive in recycling, at least they are processed thermally to produce, replace some of the conventional fuel which is otherwise used in the cement kiln. What we also discussed yesterday was interesting aspect of how municipalities, because the waste management rules, if you see, which have been notified in 2016, mostly focus on extended producer responsibility, but are not very clear on what manufacturers or producers should be doing as part of extended producer responsibility. What was propagated yesterday was also a concept of shared responsibility model, where producers and manufacturers need to work with urban local bodies. Because we know, urban local bodies in developing countries are in financially bad condition, and they can't be made responsible for entire cleanup and collection issues. So a private sector needs to work closely with these urban local bodies on a shared responsibility model, which is a kind of EPR, which is likely to work in our context. Also, important issue is to come out with integrated ocean management strategy for the region, because what has been already gone into marine water needs to also be retrieved, and as our previous speaker said that ocean needs to be regenerated, and regeneration can only happen if this litter is retrieved and kind of recycled or reused for either recycling or for thermal applications. And strategy, as our chairperson said, that there is already action plan prepared on marine litter. I'm sure that this would lead to adopting a national action plan on how basically not only we focus on better waste management practices, where we kind of divert waste from landfill sites and divert waste from littering sites, and increase and improve the recycling, and also how we arrest marine litter at the coast itself, so that they're not going into coastal waters. And also important, lastly, I would like to suggest that another concern which we have been observing is that we are doing some water quality monitoring for coastal waters, and we have been observing that concentration of phthalates is reported higher than normal concentration, expected concentration. And in all probability, these phthalates are coming from plastics. We have not been investigating phthalates previously, but to our surprise, the increasing concentration of phthalates in waters around coast is also a matter of concern. So with this, I'll close my remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Suneel, for sharing your experience, also offering comments. And now we'll open the floor for discussions. We'll invite suggestions, comments, questions from the audience. And we have the next 15 minutes we can spend on that. And so you all heard about the comments from the three panelists. And all of you will appreciate that most of these issues, most of this problem comes basically from the land. So it's basically ultimately it will ultimately lead to the solid waste management over the land. And so we need to discuss about how effective that can be done, and also any other smart or innovative solutions we can find out to solve this issue or reduce the marine plastic pollution. So we will open the floor, and we can, before that, you want to say anything more before we'll listen to them and we'll get the feedback from them? Yeah. So one by one.
Mr. Habbu is.
Yeah. Can you tell your name and just
I'm Dr. Vijay Habbu. I've come from Mumbai, work for Alliance. About phthalates, I think we should be very careful. Phthalates are ubiquitous. The plastics are the last source of phthalates. Phthalates are everywhere. They come from cosmetics, from detergents, from pharmaceuticals, from flame retardants, so many things. So, that's another angle we need not impose on plastics. Microplastics are bad enough, and phthalates and everything are certainly not a part of this thing, other than, flexible plastics, some of which may contain phthalates. Phthalates, certainly plastics need not be related to, phthalates need not be related to plastics. We need to be very careful about it.
Thank you. Yeah.
My name is Dr. Shiv Dubey. I am from TERI. My question is to any Notthoff. In India, we have got all rules and regulations in place. In your place, in your country, how do you ensure the implementation of the laws, regulations, and strictures? How do you ensure the implementation of the laws?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because certainly you get a lot, you have a good idea, and if you're lucky, you can, and organized, you can get a law enacted, but it's really the implementation that makes the difference of whether or not you're going to see any changes on the ground. So certainly in the US and in California, we have a very rich history of public citizen advocacy, grassroots organizing at the community level. Also, we have the Clean Water Act, and some of our federal environmental laws have very strong citizen enforcement provisions that allow citizens to bring lawsuits against the government to force them to comply with the laws. And very often, NRDC and other environmental groups have relied on the courts. I'll tell you right now that with the new administration, the Trump administration, that's been trying to roll back so many of our environmental protections, we're very busy in court right now defending our environment and our oceans.
Good evening. I'm Pratiksha from School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada. As far as sustainability is concerned, like economic sustainability is as important as environmental management and sustainability. So, at least in the, when it comes to local communities, especially in countries like India, so as Ma'am Annie had said, like tourism is an important, has an important role in terms of contribution to GDP to any country like Germany or California. So, but ecotourism also has negative impacts in terms of biodiversity, loss of biodiversity, or waste disposal, etc. So, how can you bring a balance between the both?
I'll start very quickly. So, certainly, you're right, you can love a place to death, right? You can love the ocean and the coast to death with so many people there. And one of the things that we've done in California, I mentioned these marine protected areas, is we've actually zoned those, and that gets into marine spatial planning as well that Vidar can talk about. But we've actually said these are areas where there is no commercial fishing, or there is no recreational fishing, but we've zoned it so that no recreational fishing, but in this area there can be spear fishing. So it's different levels of use of ocean resources, and that has had a positive result, as I mentioned, with the rebounding of a lot of fish populations.
You want to say anything?
No, I think I'm fully in line with that.
Yeah, the marine protected areas are available even in this country. Even in India, we have marine protected areas. But the question particularly is in, for example, we have a lot of tourist places along the coast. Many people go there and do a lot of activities every day. And how we can ensure that they don't harm the environment. So that's the basic question.
Right, I think that, again, and you can have, one of the things that we found is coastal tourism business owners have, there's been conflicts of business uses, right? Where you have fossil fuel development, or do you have sustainable use? So I think that actually it's been a very healthy balance in California, because those businesses that rely on clean, healthy ocean waters have been some of the strongest voices against oil drilling and other things that threaten that quality.
Okay.
I have one comment and one question. India is still in the primitive stages of even sewage waste disposal. So I think in some of the parts of India, I've seen even the sewage waste mixing into the ocean. For example, Kozhikode in Kerala, I've seen. So we need to decentralize the STP plant so that it does not go to the ocean directly. That is also need to be taken care besides the solid waste management. And my question is to Ms. Annie, how we can relate the coastal tourism with circular economy using energy efficient and new technologies for sustainable tourism and development?
Coastal tourism, circular
Coastal tourism and sustainability and efficient.
circular economy.
And the new technologies, inclusion of the new technologies for the circular economy.
Right, so one thing, so California is actually a pretty substantial oil producing state. We've been producing oil mostly inland, but some offshore drilling. But I think now we're trying to transition that into offshore wind and renewable energy in the coastal environment. So that's one of the things that we're looking to do more renewables. As was mentioned earlier this morning, California did recently adopt a goal of having 100% renewable energy by 2030, and that's going to take a lot of different technologies, and the coast and the ocean are going to be part of that.
Okay.
I'll take the last
I think
question
he has
from the audience. You want?
Did you want to answer that?
I'd just like to say that I think it's important for tourism and with tourism comes also local government, because they're often seeing very much eye to eye in terms of the short-term benefits that come from tourism in terms of tax income, etc. But they really need to understand, and I think in this there needs to be incentives and pressure also from national governments. They need to understand that depletion of the environmental qualities is really undermining tourism in the long run. One thing, I mean, possibly the biggest tourist attraction in Norway are our fjords. And we're now seeing cruise ships in our fjords that are with a density during the summer season that is essentially polluting the air of the fjords and depleting the quality of the experience. Even that is not enough for some local mayors to realize that something needs to be done, because they're looking at this year's budget or next year's budget or next year's election. But what we have done from the national level is to make clear that there will be new and far stricter requirements on emissions to air and water from cruise ships, which will effectively bar the worst polluters from entering those fjords. And on the other hand, we've provided rich incentives for developing electric ferries and electric shipping. We're using public procurement and requirements in public procurement to insist on low emission coastal shipping, which will provide opportunities for the leaders to take new market grounds in our fjords and in tourism. So a mix of regulations and incentives can really go a long way here. But you need to realize that local communities are at times too much invested with the tourism operators.
Okay, last question.
I'm G.N. Kasba. I work with Radhe as senior advisor. I'm a former municipal commissioner of Srinagar Municipal Corporation. My point is that the gentleman mentioned something has to be dovetail between regulations and incentivization. And Mr. Pandey, plastics are becoming a big problem here in India and elsewhere. But we have separated the solid waste management rules 2016 from the plastic management rules. Rather, we have virtually left the plastic industry scot-free, number one. They also owe a responsibility. Second thing about the waste management is composting, which is very important for this country, giving a huge population. And this gets into our landfill sites. Composting has not been incentivized. If it's not done, our waste management would be a half story. Thank you.
What's the question, sir?
How to incentivize composting, maybe?
My question was the plastic waste management rules and solid waste management, dovetail them together.
Yeah.
And second thing was hold plastic industry responsible for at least recycling or taking it to the cement industry or giving incentives to the cement industry to industry collaboration. And third thing was composting to be incentivized, both at domestic level or the institutional level.
So I think the remarks which you made about composting is a suggestion. Plastic waste management rule, which you say, I mean, you're right that there is a municipal solid waste management rule which is called solid waste rules, and that also laterally discusses plastics as part of municipal solid waste, and plastic waste management rule specifically deals with plastics. But if you look at plastic waste management rule, its main focus is the carry bags and the thin plastic bags which are thrown and which are not, which are generally littered and which are a problem. And also, they were so thin earlier that they were not lucrative to informal sector to pick them up and or waste pickers to pick them up and take it for recycling. So rules basically deal with saying that there should be certain prescribed thickness, more than 50 micron, and also what kind of colors you can use for plastic bags and what kind of material you can pack in plastic bags. So the two rules have different focus actually. Regarding your second question, which was on plastics being sent to cement kilns, and I think industry to industry collaboration is already happening on cement kiln co-processing, where a lot of off-specification plastic products, plastic packings, are already going to cement kilns for co-processing. So that's already happening. The concern is the littered plastic or low-value plastic, which is littered ultimately, how that is collected and sent for either recycling or co-processing in the cement kilns.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will conclude now, just 2-3 minutes more. Now, of course, you know that we have solid waste management system and policies for major cities, which we have been doing. We have to really do a kind of a serious introspection, saying that how effective the mechanism is. That is one aspect. The second thing is we need, of course, the problem is so serious, and multiple participations from different communities are required. For example, policy makers, scientific communities. Most importantly, public participation is very, very important. The public should be more aware about the issues, and they are not polluting only over the land, they are also polluting oceans. So the public awareness, also the active participation from the public is also very important. So best before concluding, I will request each panelist to give the most important takeaway message from you. Is it possible? One message.
So each of us is part of the solution.
Okay.
On plastics and how to fight plastic pollution, my single one message is that there is no single one message. You need a wide array of efforts.
Local waste collection, I mean, if that can be strengthened, because that's preventing litter reaching the coastal waters.
Okay. So we should thank all the panelists, also all the participants for active participation, and also we should thank TERI for organizing this important event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.